ladies and gentlemen. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to invite up to the stage some very talented people who have been working on Transformers for many, many years, and they're going to be talking us through some future projects that they've got coming up, some which is coming out very, very soon, like next week, and others that are coming out towards the end of the year. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. J.P. Beauvais, Jim Sorensen, and Mr. Simon Vernon. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hand it over to these guys, and they're going to talk about some stuff that they've got in their works, which is very, very exciting. Jim, why don't we start with you? Because...
Okay! All right, guys. So in terms of Transformers projects, I've got a big one that's coming out this November. It's called Transformers: A Visual History, and I think we have the cover. I said we're going to start with the single cover.
Everyone look over here.
It's like we planned this or something. So Transformers: A Visual History is something that surprisingly has never actually been done before. What we're going to try and do is encapsulate the whole entire history of the Transformers franchise from 1984 right up to this year, right up to 2019. So it's 35 years of Transformers artwork covering pretty much all the major franchises, and we managed to get stuff from Japan, stuff from the United Kingdom, and it's pretty great. It's broken into 5 major sections. So if you go to the first image, you have to go to the first image. There you go. Other way. Keep going. Wow. You're really bad at this. So we're going to start. We're going to start with the packaging art. So we go through the packaging art from Generation 1, from Beast Wars, from Animated, from Prime, from Universe. So things like Combiner Wars, things like Cyberverse. So pretty much the entire history of the packaging art. Obviously it's not going to be like Legacy where it's comprehensive. We do an overview. But we have some pretty great pieces from almost every era. Following package art, we're going to go to, there we go, to comic books. I don't know why there's a little thing on the bottom, but we go through the Marvel series, US and UK. We talk a little bit about the comics in Japan. We are going to go to the Dreamwave era, and then of course a nice heavy focus on IDW. And we even get into some of the lesser ones, like we have a little bit from Titan, again in the UK, some of the fan club material, so that should be pretty cool. There we go. Next up we go to the various Transformers cartoons that have been known over the years. Obviously starting with Generation 1, we've got a lot of neat production art that people haven't seen before. Plenty of stuff from Beast Wars and Beast Machines. Plenty of stuff from Animated, Prime. Again, Cyberverse. We even got a nice little spread for Rescue Bots in there. So whatever your poison of Transformers is, we've got that in there. We go a section on the various Transformers video games they've done over the years, all the way back from the 80s through today. So we even have a couple of screen captures from the Commodore 64 version of the game. It sounds weird, but it actually looks pretty good for that sort of 8-bit artwork. Obviously things like War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, Transformers Legends, Earth Wars, Forged to Fight. So hopefully whatever your favorite Transformers video game is, we've got stuff for that. And the Transformers film franchises. We have a good, it's our 5th chapter, so it's about 20% of the book is dedicated specifically to the production artwork, the designs, the finalized designs, and the movie posters from the various Transformers films. And we do all 6, starting right from the first one, and we go right up through Bumblebee. So we pretty much cover as I said, the entire history of the bread. There are going to be 2 versions of the book. So one of them, the retail is $50. That's the standard version. That was the cover that we saw. And there's also a deluxe edition that comes with a slipcase. It comes with 5 prints, and it comes with a lenticular cover. So Optimus Prime gets to turn into Megatron. There we go. So that kind of showcases that. So you can get either version if you want, but if you're savvy, you're going to get that version. I mean, no judgment, but this is definitely the one to get. And that's Transformers, a visual history. So I hope it's something that you guys are interested in. 408 pages, so it's massive. Oversized. Wow. Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong. Thank you.
Simon, JP, you've got something coming out next week.
We have.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
This is Transformers 84, issue 0. I don't know why they're calling it issue 0, because it's a one-shot. But IDW asked myself and Guido and JP to create what they called a prequel to the very first issue of the Marvel comic. You know, it was a strange request, because when I went back and looked at issue 1 of Marvel US, a prequel to that is pretty much they're a piece. So, you know, I mean, an awful lot happens in the first 4 or 5 pages of Marvel issue 1. You know, it goes from peace to civil war to runaway planets to asteroid fields to ambushes. So it was kind of, how do I do a prequel to this? And the answer in the end was not to do a prequel, but to take what we know and reveal what we don't know about those formative stages. The construction and launch of the Ark, maybe the secrets behind why the Ark was launched in the first place, and just weave into it a new story that reveals and will change your whole take on that initial sequence of events in the Marvel series. And then, because that wasn't enough, I then decided that, well, let's loop in Man of Iron, because that was the first UK story. And Man of Iron was a 4-part UK story that was reprinted in issues 34 and 35, or 33 and 34 of the US series. So it felt like we're not taking it out of continuity, but Man of Iron, strangely, was never much in continuity. It sat in its own little bubble a bit, because Steve Parkhouse just told a great little story, but didn't necessarily connect it much to what had gone on so far. So again, I tried to retroactively loop that and into the proper flow of events, and somehow link it back to what's happening on Cybertron 4 million or so years ago. So it was an undertaking. I hope it works. I think, you know, generally having looked through it, it holds together. But, and as you see, we've got some, you know, the other slight challenge was to find some characters that we could use who never featured in that original Marvel series. So we've got Cloudraker, and what's the other guy's name? Fastlane, thank you. They're interchangeable. So, you know, and we found some other guys as well that wouldn't sort of wreck the whole continuity of everything that had gone before. And then, really, I'm going to hand over to JP now, because what we didn't want it to do was look archaic, but we did want it to look like that original Marvel series.
thank you very much.
So skip for me then.
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously, for those of you who have been getting the definitive collection, not one word, excellent.
Yay!
You'll know in that I spent quite a lot of time trying to get the stuff that's in continuity to match continuity as much as humanly possible, which actually I'm very pleased that I had all that knowledge, because when it came to this, obviously I had to reference things quite a lot. And some of the characters never appeared at all, so that involved a bit of guesswork, trying to figure out the best way of representing them in the story. What I would say is there are ways of faking the kind of the old style, but kind of I know that it's fake. There are settings you can do in the computer, and sort of it will do most of the work for you. But I can always tell when it's been done because there are certain things. There are no solid colours. If you fake it, the colours, everything turns to those dots. But actually, if you look at the old stuff, Optimus Prime's red is a solid red. So if the red is dotty, it doesn't actually match the old stuff. So it was like really ridiculous forensic levels of scrutiny for the old book. So even like, it's quite a good plot point, but well, no, I can say that. But even like you do see Stansham Castle.
Yes.
And even things like I had to get to the original story as published in the US because the UK version was partially black and white and partially coloured. And like look at it at the most ridiculous levels of detail, so that the pixels or the dots were about this big, to try and figure out precisely how they made that type of grey. Because thanks. There's at least one person that's rather appreciates the ridiculous amount. That most people just go. And afterwards, I think this is insane what I'm doing. But again, for the obsessive fan in me, I try to do for the obsessive fan out there. But so bits and pieces like that were kind of interesting. Trying to figure out how they chose to do things. And I keep saying, no, there's no Dinobots in this, but just to say one of the things that you don't realise is how much your eye is being tricked to create exactly the palette that Naomi Omtov used. And things like Dinobots, when I had to do Grimlock in the Definitive Collection, his grey is actually made out of bright magenta and bright green dots with a tiny bit of white space between them. And when you move it far away, it's Dinobot grey. Now, if I'd have just put flat grey in there, it wouldn't look right. But when you do it in that way and then you move away, you go, oh yeah, that's Grimlock's grey. So there's a bit of that kind of falsehood on like their grey legs. So yes, you won't be able to see it from here, but that castle is the same grey, achieved in the same way using a ridiculous series of dots overlaid together. But yeah, so that's for me. It was about making it look as authentic as possible. That you could have just gone straight from issue 0 to issue 1, and you're reading the same book. So the only thing that's a little bit different, because the paper quality is a lot better now than it was then. There's just a tiny little bit of texture in there, just to make it feel a little bit longer. So I don't know if you're talking about the story.
Well, I mean, obviously, and Guido Guidi, he's the chameleon of artists, really. When we were doing Regeneration 1, and Andrew Wildman couldn't stay with the book, we got Guido to come in and not exactly mimic Andrew, but not clash with it either. So he's remarkably adaptable with his style. And again, we said we wanted it to look like an early Marvel comic, in the series. So again, he's so good at just looking at what there was in Man of Iron, in the original Marvel series, and reproduce it, but in a way that doesn't look dated or... so I think, you'll have that vibe of it belongs to that era, but it still is a thoroughly modern-looking comic.
Tiny bit more polished, just because.
Just because there's computers involved, it's a little bit.
And a madman behind the computer.
And someone that's happy to go without sleep to make sure that things just,
So yeah, that's 80, and it's out frustratingly next week. And despite our best efforts, we couldn't get copies here for TF Nation, which is a real shame. We did try, and it just wasn't going to happen in the end. So it will be coming out, I believe, New Comic Book Day next week, Wednesday. So it's out then, and I hope you all enjoy it. It's a slightly bumper-sized story. It's 24 pages, and like I say, I think it hopefully tells a story you haven't seen before, even if you think you have.
And I will say, the one full-size page that has been shown, for some reason there's no 5-page preview yet, I will actually print it out the side that I worked on it at, which is about this size. So if you want to come and have a look at that tomorrow or Sunday, then you can kind of look at it in a bit more detail and enjoy the insanity.
So, Simon, in addition to Transformers, you've got a bunch of Create Your Own stuff going on at the moment as well, haven't you?
I mean, actually, that's not quite on the Transformers front. Earth Wars continues. If you know the game, if you play the game, I'm still supplying the dialogue and story for every new character that's introduced, or pair of characters that's introduced. I believe the saga that's running at the moment is Defensor and Abominus as the new characters. So, you know, that continues apace where, you know, it seems to show no sign of slacking really. The game is very popular and the cast is growing every month really. So that continues. The definitive G1 collection, which was originally 80 volumes, has now been extended to 100 volumes. So some of the things we just couldn't include will now be looped in, and yes, Generation 2 will be in the definitive G1 collection. And actually, no one's more pleased about that than me, so...
Andrew wants that.
Yeah. And we will also be picking up some of the Devil's Due Transformers G.I. Joe stories. Obviously, we will be finishing and including the IDW verse right up to Unicron. Initially, Hasbro didn't want us to do the crossover ones with the other Hasbro properties like Revolutionaries and Revolution, but those will also now be collected in the run-up to Unicron. So really, it is actually finally starting to look pretty damn definitive by the time we get to 100. So that will now be, rolling on with some ones I'm not going to tell you about. But there's some more surprises in that last 20 as well that I think people will be happy about.
Does it include the G2 Halloween special?
It does include the G2. Yes, indeed. Yes, yeah. No, that's in there, and very pleased to see that because it's a lovely bit of rarely seen Jeff Senior art. So, yep, that is going in. Pretty much everything we can find, we're putting into these last volumes. So, if I can swing it, we will look to put Transformers 84-0 into the collection as well, just to keep everything in there, because the funny thing is we created a problem by publishing this. It was no longer definitive now because we missed it. And so, we will find a way, I hope, to represent that as well in the definitive collection. So, that's the Transformers bits. Then, the other thing I'm working on, particularly with Jeff Senior, of Transformers artist, is a thing called To the Death.
It was too easy. So we're actually up to issue 3 now, and it's a 10-issue maxi series. If anybody read Dragon's Claws back in the day, it's very much the spiritual successor to that. It's a sort of future war, thriller, conspiracy, one man against the system. So if you're interested in seeing more, I have copies with me at TF Nation, and we have guest variants for each issue. So we have a Nick Roach and a Brian Hitch variant for issue 1. For issue 2 we have an E.J. Sue variant, and E.J. of course is going to be here, and Will Simpson did the one for issue 3. So we've got other artists lined up. We've got Christian Ward doing issue 4, Livio Ramondelli is doing issue 5, and then we've got a couple of others in the pipeline as well. So it's nice to get just that little extra Transformers connection going there. So that's To the Death, and just one more thing before I go, I haven't got this on video, but it's the Vigilant, which is the other comic I'm doing at the moment. It's a recreation of classic British heroes
from the sort of 60s, 70s, Robot Archie, Tri-Man, Steel Commando, all these guys that I grew up reading. As much as you guys grew up reading Transformers, watching Transformers, these were my sort of grounding comic book heroes. So it's amazing to be able to represent those in a new team book and give them all a sort of 21st century makeover. And again, I have copies with me this weekend. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So, we're going to turn it over to you. I haven't even started yet, and there's a man with his hand up there. You've selected and volunteered yourself to be my butler for the weekend, yeah?
Sounds excellent.
Excellent. Do you have a question?
Yeah, thank you. So I was wondering, with 84 or 0 coming on board, do you think there's possibility for more stories in G1? Because obviously, massive amount of space, but it goes across loads of planets, 2 places. We don't know what's going on all the time in both locations. So, do you think there's room for either an ongoing possibly, or just more one-shots?
I think there's definitely sort of potential for that. There's nothing in the works at the moment, but just for fun, I gave IDW 5 mini pitches for 0 issue or 84 issues that would fill in other little gaps, if you like, in that early continuity. So they would all be set very much at that sort of front end of things. But yes, I think there is very much potential, and I would love to do more because this one's been a bundle of fun to do. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Anybody else got any questions? Okay, because yeah, gentleman over there.
Jim, you said that the comic section of the visual history would include stuff from Titan and the Fan Club. But does it include anything from the German comics with the wacky covers?
I'm afraid that we didn't have anything from the German
Coward.
covers. Yes, if there's anything I'm known for, it's not taking risks.
Yeah.
So also in the visual history, you all have jumped from Beast Machines to animated. Is there no Unicron trilogy?
Unicron trilogy is going to feature in the book, certainly in the comic book section and in the package art section. We didn't have very much for the television section, which is one of the reasons I didn't mention it. It's not forgotten or neglected, but we used pretty much 100% of what we had. It's just not very much. Some of that's just the realities of what Hasbro had available in their archives today. A lot of the production on that one was done overseas, so they didn't have much that they could share with us, so we didn't have much we could share with you. But there's plenty of Unicron Trilogy love in the book, just not as much in the animation section as I might have liked.
Yeah, down there.
I'm reluctant to ask this, but the G1 collection graphic novel thing, is there any chance of some of the cancelled, or at least the scripts for the cancelled Dreamwave things turning up?
No, I'm afraid not. I mean, the trouble is with the end of Dreamwave is that stuff is mired still in a web of tangled legality and bankruptcy, and Hasbro are, again, also risk averse at reusing anything from that tail end of Dreamwave, even especially unpublished stuff. So sadly, no, we can't. But there is somewhere online a fairly detailed breakdown, certainly of Energon. I don't know whether I did the same for Age of Wrath, but there is stuff out there that kind of, and occasionally I brought scripts along to these. I haven't got them with me today, but if anybody wants to contact me and wants a set, I do have the scripts for Age of Wrath 4 and 5 and the breakdown of 6. So, you can read the conclusion, but officially, no, it won't be in the definitive G1 collection.
Sorry.
You're asking a question about Dreamwave. You're a man after my own heart. Don't apologise. because I would have asked it anyway. Do we have any other questions? Yeah.
Jim, will the visual book include KISS players?
That stuff that's from the more modern Japanese material generally isn't included in the book. We have quite a bit of vintage G1 Japanese material in the book, including box art and comic book and animation production material, and even video games.
Jim, how much of the book is going to have never before seen content, or?
I'd say maybe a very rough estimate, maybe 10 to 20% of the book is stuff that just hasn't ever been published before.
Okay.
We tried to mix in the iconic images that had to be there with some of the more wacky but maybe representative images that have been seen. Most of the comic book section is stuff that's been seen, whereas for the movie and the animation section, there's quite a bit of the behind-the-scenes production stuff that people probably haven't seen, or definitely haven't seen before. And I'm going to showcase at least a little bit of that unseen material tonight at 8 o'clock with Chris McFeely. Plug.
You're nothing but a salesman, Jim. Nothing but a salesman.
Actually, while I've got you here, there's one more thing I can reveal. That are there any fans of Death's Head here?
Yeah.
Well, then we have rather wonderfully been given a page in Marvel Comics issue 1001, which is out in September. So they asked me if I would do a page for this. It's a collection of various one-page stories. There's a 1000 issue and a 1001. We have a page in 1001, and it's myself and Nick Roach. So we've got our little Death's Head story in that. So if you're a fan, this will be the first new Death's Head stuff I've done since, I think, the Hulk Death's Head thing we did a while back for Panini UK. So, yeah, new Death's Head.
I actually had a question for Simon. Does the 84 number 0 connect to the Regeneration 1 at all?
It doesn't. I didn't try to make that leap as well, but and also they've wanted it very much of that period, so I didn't want to sort of do too much connectivity to Regeneration 1. But I now think of it in the same overall space as 84-0. 1 to 80 and Regeneration 1.
So now we're up to 102 issues. That's a slightly odd
I
number.
think it's going to go in minus, so there'll be -1 until we get to -100. So that's how it works.
Oh, I like
You
that.
start numbering them with imaginary numbers.
Yeah.
This is issue
Morgan
I.
70 blank. Imaginary numbers.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Just wondering, JP, a chance we could have a Regeneration 2?
Oh, you're right. Well, it's not for me to decide. I'll tell you what. Yes.
You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen.
Give me till tomorrow. I'll have 10 issues.
I wish he was joking. And what kind of tricks would you pull out there? Like make it all happy and bright, rainbows and...
I think it would just be more neck veins than you've ever seen. It'd be 75% neck vein, which is why you're going to be able to produce the issues very quickly.
So you're going to use the neck vein filter on the...
Pretty much, it's all zoomed in neck shots with speech balloons kind of tailing off from off panel. It's going to be brilliant.
Because Manny really went to town on the stretchy necks, didn't they?
Yeah, neck tendrils.
I love that. I love the fact that we've just got a panel here where the three men are just like...
You can tell a lot by a man by looking at his neck. I've always said that.
And the throbbing veins there.
Absolutely. More throbby than... No. This is for another time. You'll find out in issue 3.
I believe IDW's got a new anthology book, which is coming out very shortly. Simon, has there been any thought perhaps to
I mean, they haven't asked me, but, you know, I mean, I'm always up for some more Transformers. I mean, at the moment, a lot of my focus is, because we're self-publishing, self-distributing, self-promoting, self-everything to the death, a lot of my spare time is taken up with all that stuff that isn't writing, creating. It's just, you know, actually physically getting it into comic stores, getting it into people's hands, making sure all the publicity stuff is going. So that's kind of taking up a lot of my time. But, you know, as with issue 84, you know, Transformers 84-0, I just more or less dropped everything and did that one, and, you know, was really pleased to be asked. So, you know, if IDW ever come knocking, I shall probably do some more for them.
So if we wanted to get to the death in our local, I mean, obviously here we can get it from you, right from the horse's mouth, but if we're next month not at a convention where you are, what's the best thing we can do?
Well, I mean, it is in comic book stores here in the UK. We haven't gone into the US yet because it's a much bigger proposition for us, but around about October we will start to knock on that door. But it's in main comic book stores. I mean, I'm sure Worlds Apart and Forbidden Planet here in Birmingham have it, stock it, so it's widely available. Or you can go to getmycomics.com, and get your copy sent direct to you. We have subscriptions, and we have just a sort of mechanism to buy single issues. So you can pick your cover and order it online. So it's completely available. And if you are abroad, they will ship to America, to Sweden, to wherever really. So you know, it might cost you a little more, but they are shipping abroad as well. So yeah, you can get hold of copies. And, you know, just look on our website, which is www.2-the-death.com, and you'll find all the links for Get My Comics.
Brilliant, excellent. Have we got any more questions? Yeah.
JP, how long does it take you to do something like that? Because it looks incredibly intricate.
So the hardest thing with, and it was the same with the Definitive Collection as well, that the first thing I had to do was scan in absolutely tons of pages at resolutions that are enormous, and try and figure out, you know, so like Springer was one in the Definitive one where it's like, his thighs, I think they are, like a weird lavender colour, and you kind of go, okay, and you have to bear in mind with the old comics, you've literally got, you know, cyan, magenta, yellow and black. So in modern printing, you know, you just put whatever colour in it, you have gradients and all sorts, it's just easy to do. In the old stuff, it's like you create green by, you know, you can put yellow on top of blue, or you put blue dots of various sizes on top of yellow, or you have yellow dots and blue dots. So it's like, the way that you create the colours and shades of the colour is incredibly complex. And I know there's a lot of people look back at the old Transformers colouring and kind of go, oh, these aren't the right colours, or what have you. But actually a lot of it is incredibly well thought through, and a lot of it is about the drama of the scene. So when you get characters, and I did it in that as well, you throw them to purple or red, because it sort of puts them all in one space, and then you have the thing that you're trying to focus on in front. I don't know if you could just pop any of the pictures. Probably the one with Megatron is the best. So, to be honest, they take forever to get to research, and then once you start, I effectively on the computer did it the way they would have done it, which is almost thinking about, they would have been cutting out sheets of, you know, these dots, and then laying them on top of the colour, and I effectively just did that on the computer. So, again, I'll print this page out the size I worked on it, so you can have a look later. But, you know, figuring out how, you know, Megatron's blue is made in a particular way. And if you want shadow in that, you're looking at very, very tiny magenta dots to make it look dark blue. So there's all those sorts of things. So depending on the scene a little bit, and things like this scene here, which is kind of a reflection of a single panel in issue 1, to find out actually the room they were in was kind of yellow. How did they make that yellow? And also, yeah, things like the fact that it's very rare in the old books to do what's called colour holds, which is where instead of the line work being black, it's a colour. So this sort of magenta colour hold was done. So it was one of the colours that was chosen in the original book to demonstrate things like this. So a lot of the work, to be honest, is in just research. And then once you get in the zone, it's not too bad, and it helps if you've got a common cast. It's when you go, oh, now here's, you know, Scorponok, who hasn't been in the book, so let's try and figure this out. Or, with this book, it was Cloudbreaker and Fastlane were two. It was like, okay, well, they had a profile, but they didn't necessarily feature anywhere, so how am I going to make sure they're distinct from one another? And there are tiny little differences between them. But again, trying to figure those things out, getting the toys and going, okay, the back of one is this colour, because, there is a scene where one is viewed from the rear.
Spoilers!
Page 21. And it's kind of like, okay, is this Fastlane or Cloudbreaker? Because they've got a different, there's a little black bar on one that isn't on the other one. And that's actually not necessarily in the models that they used, but I had to try and signify that just because the eagle-eyed ones of you, and I know you're out there, will go, well, the colour of his back's wrong. It's difficult to say times, to be honest. The beginning of this book, each page took a really long period of time to get into the zone, and then as it went on, I was much more comfortable with knowing, yes, these are the size of dots that make up the shine on the little blue bits on Prime's, mouthpiece and stuff. So it is a labour of love. Transformers takes me twice as long as when I've done Judge Dredd or Doctor Who or anything else, because you've got to be very specific, and you've got all these shines and things like that. So
how specifically do you put the dots down? Like, do you make like a brush that'll put the dots down, or do you have to go in and make a bunch of dots?
So I have, in effect, created like a sheet of the various colour dots in various densities, and then this is going to get into the technique, but I can sort of paint them on as if it's almost like peeling a layer back and you reveal it underneath.
Are you using like the channels?
Yeah. So it's like a masked. It's getting very technical now. But it's like a masked thing which doesn't show up until I make it visible. So I can paint. So it's sort of, there's a whole sheet of blue dots effectively on that page. But the only bits that are showing are the bits that I paint when I'm doing, Optimus Prime sort of shadow bits on his face plate and stuff like that. So Megatron's shiny thighs. TM. So
That's neat.
And for those who like your, sort of the little nods to things, the guy Optimus Prime is talking to in this sequence is a character called Councillor Trucken, and he made one small appearance in an annual story called And There Shall Come a Leader. So, we just sort of drew on all little sort of bits and that, and generally I'm just annoyed at James Roberts because he keeps doing this with my stuff and dropping in references to it. I was definitely going to do stuff like that in this. So there he is from one panel, I think, in a strip that John Stokes drew way back.
Fantastic. Okay, do we have any more questions? Oh, yeah, we've got a gentleman over there.
Hi. Speaking of the definitive collection, when you read on some of the American Marvel comics, you can see there were a few changes, like Soundwave went from purple to being moved to traditional blue. Was there ever consideration to actually recolour the whole lot? Redo the colours, and say the model and palette, the old comics?
No. So as it turned out, the version of the US comic that was used in the definitive collection was actually where IDW, I believe, had commissioned someone to kind of tidy it up, and they had changed Soundwave to blue. If he appeared in any of the stuff I did, if it was US continuity, he's magenta. If it was UK, he was blue. And so the stories that were published in the UK but plainly US continuity, so like, is it Fallen Star?
Yeah.
He's seen very briefly in a corridor, and he's magenta in that. So all of the colour style was done to match the US. So again, if you were to slide the pages in between the stories, you'd go, yes, that runs that line. So there's also just like a little, subconscious thing of going, yeah, that belongs to that, as opposed to that. But no, I've never did that. Regeneration 1, Soundwave was blue. but in the flashbacks he's magenta. Now everyone had a paint job to then, because Optimus Prime used to have these blue forearms, and when they book ending had red forearms when it started. So there's an internal logic that says, well, he's had his mind changed since then, and he's therefore also had a bit of he's had a respray. But it doesn't. It's not. I'm not retconning the past. He definitely used to be magenta, and then he had his mind messed with and went blue now. There was literally an internal logic when I chose that. So.
What I was trying to get is because I've seen a few fans have done it on TV and Charter. They've taken, say, pages from, say, the Matrix Quest,
Yeah.
and they've recoloured them themselves, kind of a more modern palette and more colours and stuff.
Yeah.
I just wonder, would there ever be a consideration to kind of redo the whole US series that way?
It would cost a fortune, I think, is the reason why. I would love to do it. It's just, I mean, doing the how many pages were there? The black and white stuff, UK, 300?
Something like that.
To me, that was a dream come true. I've literally, like a kid in a candy store, pretty much every artist I've ever dreamed of touching their work, I got to colour. So I got to pretend that when I was age 4, I worked in the Marvel bullpen. With these guys. Is this the right colour red, Mr. Flynn? So if someone said, do you know what, we really want to have the, all the issues coloured up in some way, I'd be like, yes, please. But again, there is a danger that how do you improve it? Like, to me, so much of my love for it is tied up in exactly what it ended up being. When we did Regen, Andrew Wildman's note to me was, don't do it exactly how it looked, do it how you sort of think it was in your head. So it was almost like, acknowledge the nostalgia but don't make it nostalgic, which is sort of an odd, but that to me kind of nailed why it was going to be different. With this one, it needs to look like the past, but polished. So I think I'd probably sit terrified to some extent if I actually had the originals I could compare them to. The black and white UK stuff, no one had done it, so it's, whatever I choose is kind of up to me, even if I'm referencing heavily, but I think I'd be slightly terrified if someone handed me, some old, Springer or Budiansky and went, okay, now do that again. I think, I don't know if I could improve it, so that would frighten me a bit.
We did use some of the stuff that was coloured up, didn't we?
Oh yeah, what was it? Yeah.
Some of the stories were coloured up for annuals, and we used those rather than getting JP to recolour. We just used those ones because they were perfectly good. So yeah, it was a mixture, but 80% of it, 90% of it was complete.
Oh yeah, I think
scratch.
only probably about 20, 30 pages were of that whole lot had been coloured for annuals or what have you. So
yeah.
Right.
Are we done?
Well, have you got a question?
I did. I was just wondering if the Synergy collection, or the Transformers stories from the Synergy collection, will be in the complete, definitive G1.
Synergy.
Yeah, it was. They did. Okay, we can talk about it. I'm guessing no. But
Tell me more later.
I will.
Does anybody think they're going to be in it?
No.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause.